Chapter 7. We are pirates. I woke up to shouting. For a moment, I had forgotten where I was, but when I remembered, I realized what happened. I stepped out of my now open cell, and Lady Caine proceeded to yell at me. "Pipsqueak, under my pillow! Grab a weapon and join the fun!" I gulped and nodded, no intention of joining the fight. I lifted her pillow to see an array of carved wooden weapons, from a normal-sized dagger to a toothpick crossbow. I'm not using any of these on a person, I thought to myself. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my back. "Hurry up, Tiny Tyke, we're overthrowing this baby." She shoved the dagger into my hands, and I fumbled with it. "Do you expect me to stab someone?" I questioned. "Yes! Oh my goodness, yes!" she said, running out of the cell and tackling one of the 7 guards assigned to the boat. I stood in fear for a moment, then my adrenaline kicked in, and I ran out of the cell with a war cry. I was immediately trampled by a dark horse. "What are you doing?" Lady Caine shouted in anger. "Dying, apparently," I groaned sarcastically. "Don't give me attitude. Give me backup," she said, kicking the guard she had tackled into his cell, locking it with the keys she had stolen. I rolled my eyes and got back up. I felt like I needed to throw up. Someone, presumably one of Lady Caine's men, pushed past me. "Out of the way, kid." "Hey, that's Miss Candle to you," Lady Caine hissed. I looked in awe. "Get your jaw off the floor. I won't let them push you around. That's my job." I laughed nervously. Then I saw a guard running to Lady Caine. Out of instinct, I dropped the knife and clocked him in the face. Lady Caine looked behind herself and smirked. "Good job, Pipsqueak." I nodded and ran back into our cell to throw up into the bucket. "Come up deck once you're done, and dump that out into the ocean. We don't need you to stink up the place." She chuckled, then walked upstairs. After I finished, I picked the bucket up. I looked sympathetically at the beaten guards sitting in the cells of their attackers. I shook my sympathy as I remembered how they had treated me when I was in their position. I arrived on the upper deck, dumping the bucket overboard before doing anything else. I heard a call from behind me. "Miss Candle, glad you could join us." I looked behind myself to see Lady Caine swinging from one of the sail's ropes toward me, swinging past me as she placed a hat on my head. I sighed, taking it off to look at it. "So we're playing pirates?" I questioned. Lady Caine laughed. "Well, we don't have to play. This boat is ours. Do you know what pirates do?" "Steal," I answered sarcastically. "Yes!" she laughed, looking at the rest of the crew. "We are gonna be rich!" The crew cheered. I looked up at her. She was now steering the ship. "So, we're not going back to Corona?" I asked. The crew burst into laughter as if I had told an amazing joke. "Corona? We're criminals there. They hate us. They hate you, Pipsqueak." "Why would we go back?" she chuckled. I blinked. I guess it was a silly question. I forced a laugh. In truth, I wanted to see Varian. I had no way of knowing how he was being treated. I wanted to know he was okay. We had been separated because the king and queen had declared us too dangerous of a duo, but we were no more dangerous than Lady Caine and her demand for power. Lady Caine waltzed down the stairs, took my hat, and placed it on my head again. "Miss Candle, you're a pirate now. You know what pirates do?" She smiled. "Steal?" I answered the same as before. "Swab the deck." She placed a mop in my hands, and the crew laughed as my face flushed red. I nodded and began to clean as Lady Caine planned our first heist. Eventually I finished and walked into the room under the bridge, where Lady Caine was sketching on a map. "You done cleaning?" she asked. I nodded. "I wanted to talk about the whole stealing thing." Lady Caine nodded. "If you want, I can put you in the forefront, but before you go on any missions, we need to spar, teaching you basic stances, how to use a sword, you know." She shrugged, putting the pen behind her ear. "Yeah, that's it. I don't want to stab people," I shrugged. Lady Caine looked at me incredulously. "Do you prefer long-range weapons?" she asked, almost as if she didn't understand. "I don't like fighting," I said. "I freeze and tense up at the thought. Hurting people just isn't my forte," I explained. Lady Caine sighed. "I knew this was coming, Pipsqueak." "Piper," I interrupted. She furrowed her eyebrows. "Remember what I said about zest? You better get rid of that attitude, because the minute we dock, you'll have a sword in your hand and your life on the line. Hear me?" I strained my back, trying to come off as unintimidated, most likely failing. I was never taught to lie, therefore I was very bad at it. And what if I refused to go out? I questioned in a shaking voice. Life on the line, Lady Caine sang, then cackled. It's kill or be killed, kid, Lady Caine sighed, walking back to the map. So you better get killing, she chuckled, then picked her pen up again. I walked out of the room and let the sobs that had built up fall out of my mouth. What am I supposed to do? I whispered to myself. How am I always getting myself into these situations? I sighed. Looking up, I saw one of Lady Caine's men messing with my doll. I ran over and ripped it from his hands. What's the deal, tiny tyke? He asked. This is mine. Don't touch her, I hissed, clutching the doll to my chest. He laughed. Oh, baby can't sleep without her doll. He approached me and I stepped back. Nowhere else to go. I fell overboard. I was caught by Lady Caine, who pulled me back up. Leave her alone, Otter, she sighed, looking at the large, intimidating man. He rolled his eyes and walked away. What's this? She took my doll, inspecting it. Give her back! I reached for it. Her? Lady Caine flicked my nose and I backed away with a whimper. This your girlfriend or something? She mocked. I shook my head defensively as tears welled in my eyes. My brother made her. She blinked. Your dead brother? She chuckled. He was alive when we did, I shouted defensively. Lady Caine's eyes widened at my anger. You really care about this thing, don't you? She chuckled. I nodded. Yes. My eyes filled with anger. I have an idea, she sang. I'll keep an eye on your doll, and you can have her back when you finish sword training, she smiled. No, give her back now, I'd reached for the doll. Lady Caine pushed me down and held the doll overboard. The pros really outweigh the cons, Pipsqueak, she smirked. I stood, my hands shaking. Fine, just don't throw George away, I cried. Then we have a deal. She smiled softly, pocketing the doll and walking into the room below the bridge. I sat in awe at what had just happened. I had lost the only thing from when I had a semi-normal life. End chapter 7.